I can't come up with a reason not to use good old-fashioned King of Random refractory for my refresh on the big can, because it worked for months and it's cheap. So let's just go ahead and make us up a little batch of refractory spacers that I need in order to put together the lid pour for my big can. Remember, the clock starts ticking the minute you start pouring water. I have complete confidence in the ability of my cardboard mold to stand up to the pressure associated with a bunch of wet castable refractory, but on the flip side, I also don't see any reason not to trust but verify. So let's just do this to give us a little extra confidence in our technique. If it turns out that I didn't need it, well, that's fine. Sort of like wearing a belt. Generally speaking, you don't show your wiener to people, but it's still nice to have a belt just in case. Well, except for when you want to. Been a couple hours. Let's unmold this thing and see what it looks like. Oh, it's heavy. That's okay though, it'll dry out. It's really heavy. When it's lost some water, it'll be better. I wanted to show you the Solo Cup logo from my spacers. I got about 8 months worth of pretty solid burning out of this thing. I burned it regularly, at least several dozen times. Toward the end I started getting this bluish discoloration. Honestly, not sure what caused that. Probably some breakdown product of the plaster. You know, I already pointed out I'm going to go ahead and reuse the same kind of insulating compound because it worked. This is the King of Random formula. It was cheap. It got me 8 months, and I'll just blast this out of here and then reline it. The biggest erosion really occurred kind of around the T-air ports. Here's one right here. A lot of loss of wall thickness there. That's really not that surprising. The T-airs were going in and out of there regularly. There was a lot of concentration of heat because of all the airflow. Plus the T-airs were moving and the air was refluxing back out of the hole, so I'm not surprised that that took the biggest beating, which is also why I'm going to try to do those porcelain T-air port liners in there, which we'll try next. But first, let's do this, which is going to get dusty and kind of yucky. Safety first. Once you move it, it's not heavy. That's the original base that I poured, and I'm going to leave it because it's in good shape. It hasn't been exposed to as much heat, and I don't see any reason to waste all of my lining compound by digging that out just to repour it, when really it's pretty solid. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to reline this thing, bring it up to the T-air ports, and then start working on my T-air sleeves. This is my first mold for something that's practically useful that I wanted to make out of porcelain, and here is an early prototype. It's not quite right, so this one will never make it into production, but it's a start. Here's a, you can see this thing easily takes a tuyere, and I could probably modify this tuyere or make it slightly smaller if I needed to in order to maintain enough wall width. This thing almost takes it. I can get there. Not with this one, of course. I'm kind of in a race between accepting my tuyere and wall width. We'll see what I come up with. I did notice this stuff is rather less forgiving than the regular clay. It's really quite brittle when it's dry. I'll have to see what happens when I wind up firing it. So more to come, just a quick interim update. Working onward to bring the big can back to full fighting trim. What I need to do is pour just, I call it my sealing layer, just a SEALING, just a ½ inch or so of a compound in there that will hold this tube in place and seal the bottom of it, so then I can fill the outside up with my refractory mixture. Those of you who are longtime viewers of the channel have seen me do this. I'll link to the episode back, I believe, in March, where I originally made the big can. What I'm doing is really not any different except for the tuyere ports, which are still being cooked, so they're not really ready for prime time yet, but I'm planning on essentially building the thing up layer by layer like I usually do, except that the tuyere ports will somehow be incorporated into one of the refractory pores. So let's go ahead and make up our refractory. So that's ready to go. In an hour, that'll be ready for another pour, a much larger pour that we'll try to bring it up essentially to our tuyere ports. So there's V2, which is essentially V1, because I didn't do the tuyere ports. It just really didn't kind of turn out. Although I do have to say that if I get a little bit of leather and tool up a harness, I think I might have an opportunity in the sort of alt porn world, so may work on that, perhaps pair it with the chaps. Anyway, it's grotesquely heavy. It's got 100 pounds of play sand in it. It's also got at least 50 pounds of plaster of Paris. Plus, don't forget, it's got at least 10 gallons of water at 8 pounds per gallon. So that's in the range of 250 to some pounds. Most of that water will eventually evaporate, so I'll lose some weight, but it's a pretty big chunk. So I decided to make a couple of little pedestals. I've been using bricks, and you've seen what happens when I use bricks. It's just not a pretty sight. So I'll try using pedestals made out of the same stuff that I lined the old big can with. Lastly, I did go ahead and reline and remake the lid of my little can, because every so often it's nice to have a little can. I've upgraded my personal protective equipment. I'm feeling really pretty good about where I'm sitting right now. This is my thermocouple that I was using to measure temperatures. That's a K-tape thermocouple. It's got a maximum temperature of 1300 C. And you may recall I managed to record temperatures up around 1380 or so, but I did melt the thing. So I'm going to have to try to up my game on temperature monitoring. I did get this, which is a fascinating device that I don't know anything about. It's an S-type thermocouple. Obviously, it's ceramic. So I will learn how to do that. Probably pop that thermocouple in there. So anyway, I'm excited for the 2019 burning season. I'm ready to get going, and I think I'll call this a show. So please feel free to like and subscribe if you want. Or, you know what, if you don't want, that's fine too. Tell your friends, again, if you want. And again, if you don't want, I am not going to be offended. So thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.